Hi, I'm Tom. Welcome to Ledgemere. My mom always had this saying, and she had lots of sayings, but one of them was April showers bring May flowers, and it's April and it's showering. There's a lot of stuff I wish I was doing besides dodging raindrops, and one of them is building that fence down there that needs to get done, but I still really can't get out there to do much. And so here we are, not fencing. What's up, kitties? As soon as I saw that there was the bird flu pandemic, which it seems like the whole world is a pandemic. It's either war or feast or famine or some kind of natural disaster or one thing or another. I saw that they were disposing of thousands of chickens, and I saw that chickens were hard to get, so I immediately filled up the incubators. And these are laying chicken type breeds, so these aren't like meat breeds. And historically I've always had a few roosters, and I would send them along with the meat birds, and you might get 2 or 3 pounds out of them. They're generally tough, so they're really only good for stewing, but I was able to get quite a supply of broiler chickens this year, so thankful for that. And we'll go take a look at those in a second, because they've outgrown their little spot and I need to move them up here on the hill to their summer home, their forever home, I should say. It's also about time these little fellas went up to the barn and left the woodshed. They're started pretty good. I think they'll be okay without their winter blankets now. It's mostly above the 40s, and they're almost a month old. So I think they'll be okay without these. We can get these off and get them washed up and move along from that. These guys have outgrown their britches here as far as this little place goes. It's time for them to move up to the big house. You can see how big these broilers are getting. Over the course of a few years of farming, you'll realize that you just need all these things, and then the infrastructure that you need, that you didn't think you needed, that you actually need, is astounding. Yeah, you can get away without a few things for a little while, but eventually, in order to do everything right, you have to have the stuff. I've got the big coop ready. And they stink to high heaven in here. Definitely time to move them. You can see how big they are. A lot of the old timers used to basically just get one type of bird. They would order 25 or 50 or 100 or whatever of the same type of pullet, and that's pretty much how I grew up. And then once I started getting my own chickens, I just decided I wanted to get as many different kinds as I could, and I've always just liked an assortment of birds. It makes it more interesting, I think, and different birds have different characteristics, which is kind of cool. And also they lay different tints of their eggs, or different colors of the eggs, which I think makes it more interesting for customers when they're buying eggs. So what I'm going to do is I'll have these birds out here. I'll come back out in a while, see how they're doing. Right now they're not gathering underneath the light too much, so that means that they're not cold. They're just kind of checking the place out. They know where their food is. They found the water. So we'll come back a little bit later and see how things are looking. I strung up that electric fence finally. I got a lane that goes all the way down here, and I'm going to cut a hole in that stone wall right there so they can get this way and get into that pasture over there without coming up here behind the barnyard. I need to be able to access this area here, come through that gate, get to the manure pile, bring leaves. I got to go clean the lawn off, so I need to be able to get to that and get away from all the animals. So I just put the electric fence up, and let's hit the juice and see what happens. Yeah, he touched it. I expect those little sheep will go right underneath it, but I've got it low over in a couple places. I'm hoping they'll touch that first, and then they'll just be afraid of it. Oh, this little guy right here just got a good, I heard it snap. He got a good pop off that. Maybe that'll, a couple times I think, and maybe he'll be afraid of it. The Violet's right there. She's the black and white Katahdin Dorper cross, and you can see her back has a little bit darker brown. That's her winter fur. And you can see these Katahdins over here, they've already shed their winter fur. She takes a little bit longer, and she just kind of goes down the fence line with it and rubs on everything, and that's how she gets it off. He's a little bit afraid of this. I got the opening here about, it's a little bit over 3 feet, probably 40 inches. And I wanted to go around that boulder so I can get through here with machinery. And he's a little bit afraid of that little hole there, but I'm sure he'll figure it out eventually. I know the sheep can go right underneath this right here. This coming up over the side and then underneath. But the intent or the hope is that they'll touch it enough times where it's low and then just avoid it altogether. Otherwise I'll have to put another stake here and lower this bottom one. But ultimately the sheep are going to go up on the high pasture. It's just not ready yet. There's not enough feed up there, and I don't want them getting ahead of the grass, because then it just will never come in right. That wasn't so bad, was it? I figured you'd figure it out. I had somebody, my first hate mail, I guess somebody was mad at me because they said they hate dairy farmers and were animal abusers and et cetera, and I just don't even give them the time of day. But what I find interesting a lot of times with people who are total vegans and you know, buy all their vegetables, even the organic ones, do you know what all the vegetables in the supermarket are fertilized with? I'll give you one guess. Right there. Because they get certified organic manure from certified organic farms and put it on their crops, and then you've got certified organic vegetables fertilized with certified organic cow manure. I'd say they're doing pretty well in here. I was worried they'd be cold because this is the first night that I've moved them from the really small confined the really small confined area to this is going to be their final home. And they seem to be doing really well here. You can see here I've graduated to the larger water. So just one word of caution with these, there's a plastic nut that goes underneath, and then that corresponds with a part on the top, and you have to keep that tight so that this part is tight against this, because if it's not, what will happen is you'll get air in there and the vacuum won't work anymore, and so it'll just overflow and all your water will come out. This makes it a lot simpler to water this number of birds. I just have a bucket, come over here, take this off, fill it up, and that's it. Now, I do have just a regular Rubbermaid dish here, and I put it on top because what's going to happen is the chicks are going to come up here and roost, and if one of those chicks falls in here, they're not going to be able to get back out, and they're going to drown, and that'll be the end of that. So this right here prevents not only the dirt from getting in, but it prevents the chicks from falling in and drowning. One thing a lot of the farmers you'll see, particularly on YouTube, they'll have a lot of cookie cutter solutions, and unfortunately, like people, not everything is the same. So while I do think pastured poultry will work for some people, and I think it has its place, it doesn't work for me, and I'm going to give you some reasons why. Number one, you have to have the infrastructure, so you have to build some sort of chicken tractor that's going to contain the chickens, and depending upon the number of chickens you have, you may need to build more than one. You need to build it at a size that you can manage to move, so you either have to build one of those dollies like Joel Salatin has, or you have to be able to pull it with your tractor or your gator or something. So number two, even with that, you should have an electric fence, a confined perimeter around your chicken tractors, and that'll keep predators away. It's bad enough with pullets because they're confined, but at least they can fly a little bit and avoid predators. When you get the meat birds, they're prime pickings, especially when they get more plump and bigger. They're not going to be active like these are. They're going to be really hard pressed to escape a predator. They're just going to be very succulent and very tender and very enticing and inviting and delicious for those predators. So you have to have a chicken tractor, and now you got to go buy some sort of fence to put around it and energize that. The next thing is that when you have pastured poultry, when you put that electric fence out, you have to keep it mowed, otherwise it'll ground out. It also holds true for your chicken tractor. You have to have your grass 3 inches tall for that chicken tractor. If the grass is too high, the chickens won't eat it, and it's basically a waste. The final thing that I don't like about pastured poultry, well, there's actually two more. The second to the last one is that the amount of time and effort it's going to take the farmer to go out there every day, move that chicken tractor, keep the fence lines mowed, haul food and water out there. It's a lot of time invested, and I don't have that kind of time, and nor do I want to spend. I don't want to spend part of my day moving fences, moving chicken tractors around. I've got better things to do. And the final thing that I don't like about pastured poultry is with these animals moving all the time, they are outside. Unless you're putting a light on them to make sure that they're getting light. In my experience, the best way to grow broiler chickens, and again, my family's been growing broiler chickens since the early 1940s. We grew hundreds of thousands of chickens. So the things I'm telling you are tried and true. You want to keep the light on those chickens 24 hours a day. Some say 12, some say 8. The chickens, yes, they're fragile and their bones don't grow as fast as the bird, but you want to get those birds ready for market in the least amount of time possible. A lot of work, it's a lot of time for one person to do, especially if you've got more than 10 chickens. If you've got 30, 40, 50 chickens, it's a huge process. You have to have chicken pluckers, you have cones, you have to have a whole system in place. You have to have freezers, water, a lot of moving parts. And what I found is that for the amount of money it costs to have the butcher do it, it comes back in the vacuum sealed bag and frozen. I don't have all that raw meat in my freezer, causing my freezer to run for a week straight trying to chill everything down. My electric bill's not going to go up. So in my experience, this is going to be different for all of you, I understand, but in my personal experience for what I do, get the chickens, day-old poultry, feed them, keep the lights on, make a call to the butcher shop. 8 weeks later, I load them in my truck, take them down. He calls me the next day, they're frozen, and I go pick them up. Several years ago, the University of Maine did some very closely monitored studies on broiler chickens. And at the same time they were doing it, I was doing it here just to see if my results were the same. We both used Rainbow Rangers or Red Rangers, a different kind of chicken. And what we both came up with is that it takes about 4 more weeks to get that bird marketable. And during that 4 extra weeks, you've used so much extra feed that whatever gain that you thought you were going to make has evaporated. There's no advantage whatsoever. And on top of that, you've got a tougher bird. The legs are tougher. They're just not as good, a lot less weight. It still costs the same amount of money to buy them. Still costs the same amount of money to process them. If you're going to have all that time and money invested in it, why not have a 6 or 8 or 9 pound chicken instead of a 4 pound chicken or a 2.5, 3 pound chicken? My chickens are going to come out 6 to 7 pounds, no sweat, after 8 weeks. So if you do pasture your poultry, if you do use chicken tractors, it's imperative that you move them every single day, because the nitrogen content of chicken manure is very concentrated, it's very high. If you don't keep that thing moving all the time, what happens is that high concentration of nitrogen will burn the grass up, and it's not going to come back that season. It'll probably be next year before you see grass in that spot again. So it's imperative that if you do a chicken tractor, it has to move every day. And generally what they do is they move it the length of the tractor itself. So they just see where they stopped yesterday and move it, and that's it. But again, it's a lot of effort. You have to haul feed and water, and you have to have a reasonably flat terrain. If you've got rocks and obstacles, that's not going to work out too well, because what also happens when you have the chicken tractors, the chickens, they kind of get pushed back towards the end of it, so you have to be very careful you don't run over birds. It only takes 1 or 2 birds that you've run over to kill whatever profit that you thought you might have got in the first place. Now, getting back to my results that were similar to the University of Maine, by pasturing your poultry, I also tried this with these broiler chickens, the Cornish cross. You only save about 10% in feed by having them on grass. And so from a marketing standpoint, it looks great that you have pastured poultry, your animals are all out there on green grass, but you're only saving 10% in feed, and that's provided that you don't lose any to, 1, coccidia, because coccidia is in the grass this time of year, 2, predators, and 3, when you've got these chicken tractors moving out there at night, it's dark, okay? The chickens are resting. Now you've got mice and rats going in there and getting into your feed. They're going to go right by those chickens, folks, and go in there and help themselves to your feed. So I have not found, in my experience, that pasturing your broilers has proven effective. What you can do is you can put them in a chicken house and have a chicken run so they can go outside and have a dust bath with a cover over it, so that they aren't being exposed to the bird flu, the bird droppings, the manure from migratory birds. And then at night they come back into the chicken house, you close the trap door, and they're safe back in the chicken house again. So if you want your chickens to be able to go outside, it's imperative that you have some sort of a run that's enclosed with a roof over it, and that will protect the chickens very nicely. Now, in the periods of time when we don't have the bird flu, I generally let my pullets go outside during the day, and I usually send them out late to or mid to late afternoon. And the reason I don't want to send them out all day is because they'll be laying eggs everywhere, and it turns into an Easter egg hunt. So late in the afternoon, let them go out for a couple hours, and they go scratch around the manure pile and get some bugs and do all their chicken stuff, and then they come back in at night. That's perfectly fine. With pullets, you're laying hens, but with meat birds, it doesn't really work out too well, because your purpose of your meat birds is to make them fat as quickly as possible on the least amount of feed. And the way that I have found to do that is the way I've just explained to you. So I hope this video has been mildly entertaining to you, and I really appreciate everybody who comments and likes. I particularly love everybody who subscribes to the channel. Click the bell icon and then you'll be alerted every time we have a new video. Thank you very much for giving me the time of day today, and I will talk to you next time.